For When Calls the Heart fans, few moments were as heartbreaking as losing Jack Thornton. Jack had been at the center of the series since its beginning in 2014. His romance with Elizabeth Thatcher, played by Erin Krakow, became one of the show's most beloved storylines. So when Jack suddenly disappeared from Hope Valley, viewers were left with a question that still comes up years later. Why did Daniel Lissing leave the show? The answer was much more personal than many fans expected. Lissing's departure came at the end of Season 5 in 2018, shortly after Jack and Elizabeth had finally married. Instead of giving the couple a chance to enjoy their new life together, the show revealed that Jack had died while away on a training assignment. His death happened off-screen, with Jack being killed in a landslide at Fort Clay. For viewers who had spent years following Jack and Elizabeth's relationship, it was devastating. Their wedding had seemed like the beginning of a new chapter, not the end of one. But behind the scenes, the decision wasn't simply about creating a dramatic storyline. Daniel Lissing had personal reasons for leaving. Following the Season 5 finale, Lissing appeared alongside Erin Krakow and Lori Loughlin in a Facebook Live after show. Naturally, one of the biggest questions was why he had decided to leave. Lissing explained that personal circumstances had led him to make the decision. Importantly, he made it clear that his exit wasn't caused by a feud with Hallmark, the producers, or his fellow cast members. According to Lissing, the people around him were supportive when he explained that he needed to move on. That detail was important because fans had naturally wondered whether there had been some disagreement behind the scenes. There wasn't. Lissing's decision was about his own life and the direction he wanted to take outside the series. What could have happened to Jack? Once Lissing confirmed he was leaving, the writers faced a difficult problem. How do you remove one of the show's most important characters without destroying one of its central romances? The creative team reportedly considered several possibilities. One idea was to simply replace Lissing with another actor, but that option didn't feel right. Jack and Elizabeth's relationship had become deeply associated with Lissing and Krakow, and their chemistry was a major part of what made the romance work. Recasting Jack could have allowed the character to remain alive, but it also risked changing the emotional connection audiences had with him. Another possibility was sending Jack away. The story could have placed him somewhere far from Hope Valley, perhaps in the Northern Territories, with Elizabeth eventually being forced to continue her life without him. On paper, that would have avoided killing him. But there was another problem. Would Jack really leave Elizabeth? For the writers, that didn't seem believable. Jack had spent years proving how deeply he cared about Elizabeth. Having him voluntarily walk away from his new wife simply because the actor was leaving would have felt inconsistent with the character fans knew. That left the writers with an incredibly painful option: death. Why Jack had to die? Lori Loughlin later explained that the creative team had gone back and forth over how to handle Lissing's departure. Eventually, they came to the conclusion that Jack dying was the most believable way to end his story. It was heartbreaking, but from a storytelling perspective, it allowed Jack to remain the same person fans had come to love. He didn't abandon Elizabeth. He didn't suddenly become a different person. Instead, his story ended because of a tragic accident while he was serving as a Mountie. The decision also gave the series an opportunity to explore Elizabeth's grief and her life after Jack, rather than pretending that their relationship had simply disappeared. Still, knowing the reasoning behind the storyline didn't make it any easier for fans. Jack's death remains one of the most emotional moments in When Calls the Heart. Lissing says he doesn't regret leaving. Interestingly, Daniel Lissing has never looked back on his decision to leave as something he wishes he could undo. In a later interview with Entertainment Tonight, he explained that leaving the show ultimately changed his personal life in a way he could never have predicted. After stepping away from When Calls the Heart, Lissing met Nadia, who would eventually become his wife. That completely changed the way he viewed his decision. Lissing essentially explained that if he had remained on the series, he might never have met Nadia. From his perspective, that made leaving the show feel like the right decision for his life, even though he knew he was saying goodbye to a character and a production that meant a great deal to him. It is one of those situations where a career decision unexpectedly opens the door to something much more personal. He still misses Hope Valley. Leaving the show didn't mean Lissing stopped caring about the people he worked with. In fact, he has spoken warmly about his time on the series and the relationships he built while filming in Vancouver. He remembered the cast and crew as something of a family, and admitted that there were parts of that life he genuinely missed. That makes his departure a little easier to understand. Lissing wasn't walking away because he hated the show or wanted to distance himself from his former colleagues. He simply reached a point where his personal life and future needed to take priority. And despite Jack's heartbreaking fate, his time on When Calls the Heart left a lasting impression. Jack and Elizabeth's story still matters. Jack Thornton may no longer be walking the streets of Hope Valley, but his relationship with Elizabeth remains one of the defining chapters of the series. Their romance had everything fans loved about When Calls the Heart: patience, sacrifice, misunderstandings, emotional challenges, and ultimately, a deep commitment to one another. That's also why Jack's death hit so hard. The audience wasn't simply losing a character. They were losing half of a couple they had invested in for years. Daniel Lissing's decision to leave forced the show to take a difficult path, but it also allowed When Calls the Heart to evolve. Elizabeth's story continued, and the series entered a new era without pretending that Jack had never existed. In the end, Lissing's departure wasn't the result of a Hollywood feud or some dramatic behind-the-scenes conflict. It was a personal decision. And while fans may always wonder what Jack and Elizabeth's future could have looked like, Lissing himself appears to have made peace with the choice. Sometimes, leaving one chapter behind is exactly what allows another one to begin.